in that you've done a lot of the background to lime treatment. So yeah, Project SMaRT is a collaboration between Médecins Sans Frontières with BRAC Bangladesh and the University of Brighton here in the UK. And we were keen to optimize the deployment of lime in densely populated humanitarian settings, namely at Cox's Bazar. And as Nyanka says, we're not proposing lime as an alternative to biological treatments, but as a backstop for NGOs such as MSF to deploy during the immediate phase of an emergency or during waterborne disease outbreaks. And the potential utility of lime treatment was illustrated in a 2018 comparison that was conducted at Cox's Bazar by Elrha on behalf of Oxfam. And what that showed was that lime is rapid in terms of setting it up. It's easy to operate. It's resilient to natural disasters and to changes in the quality of influent operation and climate. Lime also had the lowest footprint of any of the methods investigated, meaning it is particularly useful for places where space is at a premium. And the report also highlighted the robustness and the stability of the actual treatment process itself in handling fluctuations in the quality of lime. However, as kind of mentioned, there are high operational costs involved in terms of the quality, the actual lime that's being used, and the generation of the high pH end product. So we're not proposing it as a long-term solution, but it is a very useful backstop. Jeff, I don't know if you want to come in here and give a little background to this project.
Yes. So I just want to present now a little bit about the background, where it came from. So the first time we used lime for treating wastewater coming from a cholera treatment center. I think, James, you need to mute yourself. All right. All right, and so the background of that was that we had a situation where we had cholera, well, wastewater coming from a cholera treatment center, and we couldn't use a traditional way of treating the wastewater. There was not enough space, and we had to find a different way of treating the wastewater. And there were very high risks of not treating this wastewater, especially for further transmission of the infection to neighborhood communities. So that's where we started. We contacted, at the time, Professor Hugh Taylor, who is not with us anymore, but who was a key person that has invested. He even came to Haiti to help us and to start up with the lime treatment, because he had his own experience of using lime for treating wastewater in Brazil. And I think that would be enough to set the scene for now. And based on the work that we have done and the pilots and the research, there were several papers at the time that were published and a presentation at different conferences about the method.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so the research questions that we hope to explore during this project were to try and look at uncertainties around lime dosage that are a result of lime usage. So can we improve the efficacy? So can we decrease reliance on the expensive imported lime supplies by addressing concerns about fluctuations in the quality of available lime? We also wanted to look at whether it's possible to characterize fecal sludge in the field beyond using sort of E. coli, so looking at viruses, vibrios, helminths. And also whether we could address this issue of fluctuations in the consistency of fecal sludge arriving for treatment as well. Sorry, jumped ahead there. And also whether we could look at how well lime works treating fecal sludge from clinical sources as well. So the project took place at 2 fecal sludge treatment plants, one MSF-run FSTP1 at Thayankali, and the second at UNHCR BRAC-run FSTP2 at Ukiah. And this project was supported by the expert teams on the ground. So before we started, we carried out some pilot work back in Brighton, and this involved using artificially created fecal sludge in 1 litre beakers. And what we were doing here was testing a range of different concentrations and different contact times from 1 hour through to 1 month. We took samples before, during, and after treatment, and we then looked to see how well the lime was performing. And what these initial pilots were showing was that lime above 20 grams per litre concentrations wasn't actually helping to lift the pH beyond 12.4. So it was not useful to throw money at this by using more concentrated lime supplies. And what we were also able to show was that contact time, there was no significant difference in the log removal of these different parameters between 1 week and 1 month. So these informed the subsequent work that was done on the ground. What we also were doing was to explore whether we could characterize the quality of lime supplies in the field. And to do this, we used a previous method that was published 28 years ago by Practical Action. And we adapted it so that we could use it in field labs in Cox's Bazar. And this was done at the labs, FSTP1 and 2. Okay, so we then moved on to full or bucket scale or barrel scale treatment, looking at 50 litres of fecal sludge of varying ages, so from 26 days to 45 days old, at 4 different lime concentrations and at 3 separate contact times. And again, we took samples and we tested them before, during, and after treatment. And these trials are repeated 8 separate times, 4 times using domestic fecal sludge from communal latrines, and 4 times using fecal sludge from healthcare facilities, so communal latrines at healthcare settings. And this work was done by colleagues on the ground from MSF and BRAC. We're also able to look at data that MSF were collecting from raw fecal sludge samples arriving at FSTP1 at the screening chambers and from fecal sludge trucks. So nearly 400 samples also tested for a range of parameters as well. So we've got this really decent kind of data set here. And in terms of the methods that we were using for the lime trials, the barrel trials, we were looking at a range of different parameters, including, interestingly, somatic coliphages. Now, these are viruses which are capable of infecting bacteria. In this case, the bottom right shows what they look like, and this is an E. coli that they're infecting. And just in the same way that we are able to count the number of colonies of bacteria that grow, we're able to count the number of these holes that these viruses create. And it gives us a quantitative understanding of how well the lime is performing. I will move on to my colleague, Dr. Diogo.
Yeah, so just summarize in terms of the results. So again, these are a kind of overall results. So we take in consideration all contact times and all concentrations. So you can see from the graph about the pH values that from 10 grams per liter to 20 grams per liter doesn't really change and kind of hit the sweet spot in terms of 12 pH value, while 5 grams per liter, it didn't reach even 11. So that was aiming, trying to optimize which was the best concentration that we should be applying. Again, like Nick said, I mean, this also relates to the kind of nature of the faecal sludge. So, I mean, more solids, maybe you should have more addition of more lime, but we can see from the graph that 10 grams per liter should be enough. And so these graphs here, they summarize in terms of log reduction about the indicators that we use. So the top, so the green graph, you show that these are E. coli log reduction. So you can see that the 5 grams per liter was not really efficient in terms of reducing the amount of E. coli. And you see that 10 grams, 15 and 20 grams, they quite kind of, there was no kind of significant difference. They all achieve quite high log reduction in terms of, yeah, above 5 log reduction. So moving on to the somatic coliphage. So you can see from the yellow graph, so you can see that, again, the 5 grams per liter was not very efficient. And all the treatment concentration, they quite efficient. You can see that there's more variance to the 20 grams per liter, achieving even higher, but we can notice that there are less in terms of efficacy comparing to E. coli, less log reduction, so showing that somatic coliphage is more kind of resistant to Lyme treatment. Moving on to the next, so the Vibrio, so we use a kind of general Vibrio, so we try to specify cholera, but this graph is about a general Vibrio, so using Vibrio media. So again, this show very high efficacy against the Vibrio. So even the 5 grams per liter showing quite very efficient. And moving on to the helminth eggs, again, is important to see the scale of the y-axis here. So helminth eggs, as following the literature, was not very efficient in terms of removal of helminth eggs. You can see that not even 1 log reduction, so 0.22 log reduction for 20 grams per liter. So it was very inefficient in terms of removing the helminth egg. So this follow the literature that we already know about not being efficient. Yeah, in terms of the chemical parameters, so just summarizing here, that was not very efficient in terms of removing COD, but was efficient in terms of removing BOD. But again, still not within the legislation guidelines in terms of the Bangladesh guidelines for wastewater discharge or European guidelines. So again, this needs further treatment. So yeah, so that's summarizing some of the field results. So we still got quite a lot of analysis that we could show, but this kind of that was the summary, to be honest.
Great, thank you, Diogo. So yeah, in terms of our findings, we were able to show that lime quality could be successfully tested and characterized in the field using the rapid sugar test. What we also found were that unopened lime supplies that had been stored, they'd been stored in the dry and out of direct sunlight, that they had remarkably retained their treatment efficacy. So the hydrated lime supplies over 6 years, which clearly is quite a diversion from 6 months. So this was interesting. We were also able to show that even the 10 gram per liter lime suspension and a contact time of just 1 day were sufficient to ensure 3 log reductions of E. coli, of somatic coliphages, and of Vibrio species in the treated fecal sludge. And importantly here, this was regardless of the age of the sludge, the consistency of the sludge, or the origin. So whether it's coming from households or whether it was coming from communal latrines within healthcare settings and hospitals as well. We were also able to show that all lime concentrations and contact times demonstrated poor removal of helminths, reinforcing the importance of extra or additional treatment steps as well. And interestingly, somatic coliphages, so these viruses which infect bacteria, are used to reliably show or monitor the treatment efficacy, and that they are more resistant than using indicator bacteria like E. coli to show us treatment efficacy. So they're giving us a more conservative indication of risk from more persistent microorganisms as well. And interestingly, somatic coliphages were able to give us a sort of preliminary count after just 4 hours. So that's 20 hours quicker than waiting for E. coli to grow. So this test happens very, very rapidly, and it allows us potentially to make near real-time adjustments to the treatment. So there are lots of reasons why this is useful. So what we've since done, and working with the teams on the ground at MSF and BRAC, is to, through an iterative process, is to develop a series of manuals. So we've got one which describes the process for characterizing Lyme. We've got another one which outlines how you can test for somatic coliphages. And the final one, which actually outlines the Lyme dosing and treatment performance testing that was conducted and how that can be conducted in the field. So thank you for your attention. And if you are interested, there are electronic copies via our website, and kindly hosted by our funder, Elrha. And I also have hard copies, which I'm happy to dispatch. I'm happy to post out. If you email me, then I can send those to you. So if you'd like a hard copy of them to use, then please do. So thanks for your attention. Last slide is we are just preparing this publication for environmental health perspectives that will gather these findings presented and some additional analysis as well. So yeah, thank you for your attention, and I'll stop sharing my screen.